A historical background, I think, is really important to this Sharpeville uprising day, because it is often erased, it is revised and reduced to an ahistorical generic human rights day, which it is not. Many people died for this day.
Imagine, as an adult, having to report your every move, living in a community where your every step is monitored, having to ask authorities even to visit a friend. Imagine being incarcerated in your own community, not being able to cross the road just into the next suburb. Those were truly trying times. Well, there's a generation that didn't have to imagine what I've just described because they lived it. I made a video on the 21st of March 2019. It was about, what does Human Rights Day mean to you?
So I just wanted to follow a different perspective. During apartheid, I was fairly young because I was born in 1988, right? And at that time, it was sort of dying down a bit. And so I wasn't exposed as much to the apartheid regime. God bless me, and all those that came during our particular time,
I never published it. And to be honest, I'm glad I didn't. Because now I truly put in the work and effort into researching what this day was all about. It's not an impromptu take, it's an educational take. So in this video, we'll be cruising through the history, the pain, and the meaning of this day, while also taking some lessons along this journey, all with the ultimate aim of trying to figure out what it truly means to have human rights.
The sun saying, if you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going. If we do not know the sacrifices of Sharpeville, we cannot appreciate where we're going to.
We celebrate and commemorate Human Rights Day on the 21st of March every year. We've done this since 1994, now 28 years. But if I were to ask you this, have you ever sat, researched, tried to be inquisitive enough and curious enough to discover why? Why have we done so? If you haven't, then stick around, because lucky for you, you pressed on this video. We'll go on a journey to discover a few things around it, starting with a quick summary is that Human Rights Day in South Africa is historically linked with 21 March 1960, where a peaceful protest was held, yet led to an atrocity. 69 people dying, 180 people wounded, when police fired on a peaceful crowd of between 5,000 to 7,000 people that had gathered in protest against the past laws. It's a sad reality. A peaceful crowd marching for the right to not carry these passes, marching for the right freedom of movement, marching for the right of the African and Black child. In 1948, the Nationalist Party came to power in South Africa and formalized segregation in a succession of laws that gave the government control over the movement of Black people in urban areas. The Native Laws Amendment Act of 1952 narrowed the definition of Blacks with permanent residence in towns and cities. Legally, no Black person could move from a rural area to an urban one without first getting a permit from the local authorities. And once having been in that urban area, they needed to seek that permit within 22 hours of their arrival, just so that they could get work. The reference book, or pass, included a photograph, details of place of origin, employment record, tax payments, and encounters with the police. And in 1956, women from all walks of life protested against this racist pass laws, when 20,000 women marched to the Union building in Pretoria, singing, wathinta abafazi, wathinta imbokodo.
Abafazi, wathinta imbokodo, wathinta abafazi, wathinta imbokodo. Umamuslinga, wathima khoskazi manyanami, wameneza umamuslinga, wathima khoskazi manyanami, wameneza umamuslinga, wathima khoskazi manyanami. Sisimanga setompasi, esaqinile izwe lonke. Sisimanga setompasi, esaqinile izwe lonke. Sisimanga setompasi, esaqinile izwe lonke. Sisimanga setompasi, esaqinile izwe lonke.
Translated to mean, you strike a woman, you strike a rock.
It was a Black Monday, and the stench of death was everywhere. The PAC status campaign raised the consciousness of African people to assert themselves as people of value, people of human dignity. Professor Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Tanzania, 61 years ago, led a peaceful, positive action campaign against the pass laws.
Black men gathered at Sharpeville without passes and presented themselves for arrest. The order was given to disperse. I can only imagine being in that crowd. Police horns thumping, you can see the weapons, but you aren't afraid. Unfortunately though, the police opened fire on the crowd of men, women, and children. Following this Sharpeville massacre, a number of black political movements were banned by the nationalist government, but the resistance movement continued to operate underground.
In Sharpeville, 20,000 people came. In Langa, 30,000 people came. And then on the 30th of March, another 60,000 people came out demanding the release of those who had been arrested during the positive action campaign. And in sentencing the PAC leaders, the magistrate said not only was it your objective to fill the jails, but you intended to paralyze trade, industry, and the economy of the country in order to force the government to change its laws. Indeed, in one day, the stock exchange fell by 600 million pounds. This positive action campaign had the ability to bring about the liberation of the African people in that one day. If it wasn't for the rescue of the US banks to the tune of $300 million, we would be liberated much, much earlier than 1994. In response to the magistrate, Sobukwe said, amongst many things, we believe in one race only, the human race, to which we all belong. The history of that race is a long struggle against all restrictions, physical, economic, and spiritual. Without it, the apartheid and colonial regime would never have been exposed, nor would this struggle have been internationalized.
Many people lost their lives, unfortunately, not only in Sharpeville, but also in Langa Township within the Western Cape. It was a tragedy, a travesty. It was unbelievable. Robert Sobukwe would then be incarcerated for 3 years and then indefinitely, or at least the clause had stated that he'd then be indefinitely incarcerated. So they moved him to Robben Island, where he spent 6 years in isolation. The prisoners knew of him, and some were lucky enough to at least see him at a distance.
And he would read and listen to music and pass the day as constructively as possible. He fought against the despair, obviously. What eventually happened, he'd been on the island for 6 years in these quite terrible circumstances, never knowing when he was going to come out. Could have gone on indefinitely. And it began to erode him. And there was clearly something wrong. And I think the government suddenly realized that they had a problem on their hands. and they dumped him, quick as a flash. Put him into banishment in Kimberley.
Banished to the township of 𝐔𝐬𝐲𝐜, outside Kimberley on the 14th of May 1969, under house arrest and constant surveillance, Sobukwe was able to establish roots, settle down with his family, and study law.
It's a sad story. He then later passed at the age of 53. Now in the modern era, when South Africa held its first democratic election, with Nelson Mandela elected as its first democratic president, 21 March Human Rights Day was officially proclaimed a public holiday. On Human Rights Day, South Africans are asked to reflect on their rights, to protect their rights and the rights of all people from violation, irrespective of race, gender, religion, sexual orientation, whether they are foreign, national or not. Human rights apply to everyone equally. We must remain vigilant and report any types of cruelty, such as human trafficking, child labor, forced labor, and violence against women, children, and the aged, as well as other vulnerable groupings of people. As we journey on in this endeavor, let's actually find out what some ordinary South Africans have to say and what they think about the current status quo as far as human rights are concerned. Let's put into the mix a few of the politicians and hear what they have to say. Then, if you don't mind staying some more, let's listen to some community activists on the ground pushing their operations towards equal human rights for all.
Black people everywhere in this country have no human rights to speak of. It is black people who stay in the infested and flea-ridden.
What I know about human rights is that we all have them and we benefit from them from the day that we're born, and we are entitled to these rights merely because we are humans.
Our country has been tainted by corruption, state capture, self-enrichment by those in power, to the neglect of the higher mission and placing one's self-interest before the community's interest.
2 words to describe human rights, for me, when I think of the term human rights, is freedom and equality.
As Chair, the Constitution of South Africa in Section 24 guarantees each citizen the right to an environment that is not harmful to their health and well-being.
Human rights to me mean the core values and morals that we have set up as the universe. They are basically the universal language. They are the right to basically express yourself and be who you are and do what you want and whatever you like in a way that obviously doesn't break the rules. It's your right to learn, and by learning I don't only mean within the textbook, like go beyond the textbook. Don't let school get in the way of your education. That's something I've always kept with myself. So human rights to me are literally what the 2 words are: the right to be human, the right to be you.
The gender gap that exists in South Africa is a reflection of the systemic nature of exclusion and disadvantage faced by women, whether as a result of apartheid or of the broader pattern of patriarchy found in present-day South Africa.
Our primary struggle at the time was for the restoration of land back to its rightful owners. That means the indigenous, and the land is not back yet to the indigenous African people.
Human Rights Day for me means giving thanks to the people that fought for the rights that I have today, and just giving gratitude and celebrating those people.
So human rights means to me is celebrating the rights that we have as individuals, as South Africans, knowing that people in the past fought for us to have rights and they died for it. So just accepting that and celebrating that we living the fact that they, you know, what they did, and yeah, they opened the doors for us.
The first lesson that we can take from this entire video and from the ordeal of Human Rights Day and all the things and actions that took place back in 1960 is the fact that as the generation of now, the generation of current, we need to look back and never forget. We can forgive, but we can't forget. Ours is to be informed, not only informed, but educated. We need to make the right decisions, look forward, but also know where we come from. These human rights that we celebrate today, that are being infringed upon, not only by the powers that be, but also by us as ordinary citizens. We need to look at the steps that we take, make sure that we aren't infringing upon the rights of others, but be so informed and involved, so educated enough to educate, use platforms such as these types of platforms to inform and empower others, so that history never gets dissolved. History never evaporates. History remains in our minds. We need to continuously remind ourselves of the happenings of the past, because it's through those roots that we get to establish the stronghold that is the flowers that bloom from the past heroes. We need to now move forward and be the heroes of the present. But remember, the first lesson is never forget. The next lesson is this: build within your gifts, skill sets, and potential. A lot of us have the potential to lead. A lot of us have the potential to express ourselves enough so that our voices speak volumes, bring about change, and actually make a difference. Helping those that think that their human rights mean nothing actually believe in themselves enough and accept that they too have human rights equally as per the Constitution. So use those gifts and potential so that others actually learn and build from them. We have so much leadership capacity and potential in this country of South Africa and beyond. In politics, in education, in community activism, in the unlocking of minds on different platforms. DJ Sbu, Nicolette Mashile, Emmanuel Sebunoko, Tshepo Moseidi, God Penyo or Penyol Mlotshwa, Nhlanhla Lux, McG, Sol Penduka. I can go on and on. Thuso Mbedu. There's so many people with so much potential who are making a difference and showing that it's possible. But for them to do that, it's through the expression of those that came before us. Our human rights are a gift, so we need to enjoy them. We need to embrace them. We need to share them, and we need to grow them so that the next generation actually benefits from us. Well, the key thing is for collaboration towards the overall goal. Human rights may be there on paper in theory, but a lot of work has to be done on the ground. A lot of foot soldiers are there day to day. They are being punished for exercising their rights. There are still pockets of racism here and there in society. It's sad, I know, but it's a reality. It's there, it exists. So we have to collaborate. We have to work together. We have to collaborate, and we have to go against the plight of human rights as far as it concerns not only ordinary South Africans, not only ordinary citizens, but the common person in the street corner. Everyone has to get involved. You have to play your part. I have to play my part. You have to report the ills that exist. Government has to give sufficient budgets to commissions such as the Human Rights Commission.
We've come a long way. We're positive. We think that we can still push the human rights agenda. But again, and I think it's Khosi that mentioned it, that we can't have Chapter 9 institutions that's underfunded and do not have all the capacity to make sure that we fight for the realization of people's rights.
And they themselves have to execute accordingly in terms of their functions and scope, because they are a Chapter 9 institution. So we need to collaborate and work together, fight together, not against one another. not pulling in different directions, but actually understanding the law, knowing my brother is my brother, my sister is my sister, but in protection of my land, my family, my community, and those that are close to me. We have to actively participate on this journey of bringing South Africa into a positive landscape. Transformation was never easy. Transformation was always going to be a journey. So the actions that took place in 1960 on the 21st of March truly helped not only change the status quo, but transform the way the world viewed South Africa. Now that the baton has been passed to us, we need to then transform the current status quo. No one else, unfortunately, is going to do it for us. It is up to us. Transformation is a cumbersome, a treacherous, a long journey. A journey that needs involvement. A journey that involves you and I. It starts with you and I at the end of the day. It starts with you and I at the end of the day. So this journey towards transformation needs a few things, a few pillars, a few strongholds. One is that we must work in unison on this journey. Two, we must listen to each other because we all have pains and challenges that we haven't overcome and that we need to overcome ultimately. Three, we need to have that open dialogue that doesn't end in dialogue, but actually changes into action, practical, pragmatic steps that will lead to a change. Transformation in this generation means power economically, influence economically. It means the young taking leadership. It means the young using their platforms and their voices and their talents and gifts and skill sets to actually change the mindsets. In fact, transform the mindsets of society. We as the young need to look past our challenges, but not blindly so. Look past them by actually taking action so that that status quo transforms and changes for the better. So lesson number 4, let us transform and look at the journey of transformation as one that is necessary. Of course, there wouldn't be a lesson on this channel that doesn't involve you spreading the word, spreading the message, sharing. Whilst we're on that subject, how about you like, subscribe, then actually share. Press the notification bell because this is an empowerment and educational channel that dwells on various subjects, gives you the necessary tools, gives you the necessary education and information, and informs you on how to become the best version of ourselves. Think about it. When I say it starts with you, and that it starts with you, the you applies to everyone, that culminating cyclic spiraling effect will then snowball and spread to other people. But it starts with you sharing, building with us, and making sure that you embrace your human rights while embracing the human rights of others. Because the truth is, for human rights to truly mean something, and for them to be passed down and to be sustainable, then we need to be reminded of who we're living right for. Who do we want their rights to really be meaningful and mean something? And the truth is, it's for this next generation. We're not doing it for us. It's too late for us. The generation of Steve Biko and the ones that were leading the journey with him, they did it for us. So we need to carry the baton forward and pass it on so that our angels, our young kings and queens, princesses and princes can actually enjoy it. Cheers, guys. It starts with
You Network!
if he had to leave this talk, the 3 points I would say is we now live in a country where our human rights have become negotiable. That, for me, that has now become extremely apparent. We live in a country where too many people sleepwalk through the injustices and they need to wake up. And I think we need to be brave enough to ask the tough questions of, if our constitution as it stands is not capable of defending us the way we imagined that it would, then we need to have the tough conversation of what institutions can we change and rework in order to make sure those protections are entrenched. Thank you so much.